This is Dan Abbott. I'm making this video for the AEDD 105 class at Southern Maine Community College. First assignment is to create a number of layers and create a number of lines, and I'm going to use this video as a way of showing you how to go about doing that. If you go to my SMCC when you log onto the portal, our class is listed in the left-hand side, AEDD 10501. You have your assignments. The first one is to send me an email. That's due almost immediately. The second one is to watch another video that I made just going through very briefly the AutoCAD 2020 interface. Your first actual drawing assignment under Fundamental Projects called Line Weights, Types, Measurements, and Lettering. There are a number of things that you have to do for this. If you go and select that assignment and then go down where there are a couple of files, we'll start with the first one. If we download the line weights file, you're going to see this. And what it's telling you is that you need to create each of these lines using those instructions right here in AutoCAD. And I'm going to go through that right now. The idea is to use layers to control both the line type and line weight, and also to recognize what these line types mean. This is a two-part assignment. This is the first part. The instructions below say start AutoCAD, create a new imperial drawing, which would be done with the acad.dwt template, and then to use the layer command to create these layers. Once you've done that, you're going to draw each of these lines and place each line on the proper layer, and then label those lines. All you have to do is just follow the instructions, and then you'll be able to do that. For the purpose of this video, I'm now going to move this document off my screen so that I'm looking at it on the other screen, but you won't be seeing that while I'm going through unless I go back and forth a little bit. So I'm going to move that right now out of my way. And now I've got AutoCAD showing here. I did start a new drawing. The new drawing that I started was in fact an imperial drawing. I started with the acad.dwt template. Now I already have my layer property manager open. You can go up to the ribbon and turn yours on or off. It'll open like that. You can type layer at the AutoCAD command prompt. I can come down here and type LA, actually, the alias for layer. In order to make layers, you simply go to that little stack of paper that have the sunshine on it. If you pause, it'll tell you what it does, and that's true of anything in the interface. You just pause long enough, it'll give you some instructions. I'm simply going to go through the list of layers given in the assignment and set them up. So I'll pick that little star. The first layer is called center, so I'll call it center. Now I'm going to leave it turned on. I'm going to leave it thawed out. I'm not going to lock it. I'm going to let it be a plottable layer. And now I need to change the color. It indicates I need the color blue. I'm going to go and pick that color right there. It could be also the color 5. The line type itself is not going to be continuous, so I'm going to go into the line type tab. Let me just stretch this out so you can see it, all the things we've got as options here. So under color, I've selected blue for the center layer. Now I go to continuous. That's the only layer type that's line type that's loaded. So I'm going to go down to the load button. I'm looking for a layer called center 2, and it is right here. Now don't pick center X2. That's twice as big a center line, or twice the scale of the center 2. So we're going to pick center 2, pick OK. Now I have to select it again to assign it to that layer. The process of loading the line type is not the same as assigning the line type. When I'm done, I have a new layer called center. It's blue and has a center 2 line type. I'm going to go back and select layer 0. By the way, you cannot change the name of layer 0, you can't delete layer 0, and you should never draw on layer 0 unless you are specifically creating a block definition. I go back to the little layer start. I'll layer create. This time it's called a chain line. I'll come back over here to the color. The color we told you to use for that is cyan. It's that little blue right there. The line type for chain line is also center 2. However, unlike the center line, the line weight is not the default, which is a thin line. The line weight has to be set larger, and what we're going to do is use 0.4. Let's use 0.5. That should be a thick line, and it should be twice as thick as all the other lines. The default line weight in AutoCAD is 0.25 millimeters. We'll go back. I keep going back to 0 just so because now I'm starting with the same standard setup that 0 has. Cutting plane. Cutting plane. Come over and grab the color. The color for the cutting plane line is designed as white. It's already white. I'm going to leave it that way. Cutting plane line has a phantom line type, so I now need to go down and load another line type. it tells me to use Phantom 2. I'm coming over here, Phantom 2, I select it, it's now loaded, but I have to pick it and pick OK in order to assign it. I'll go back over and do another one. The next one is called Dimension, which is now spelled correctly. I'll go to the color for the dimensions. It said we should use magenta. That's that color right there. And the line type for dimension should be continuous, so I'll simply pick continuous since it's already loaded, and the line weight should be thin. Now I'm going to pause this video, do the rest of these the same way so that you don't have to sit and watch me go through this process, and then I'll come back. I am back. I haven't quite finished, but I am going to show you something. I'm going to make a phantom line. Phantom line is a specific line type, and it's different than the cutting plane line, even though the line type is the same. Indicated for phantom lines, we want the color to be magenta as well, so we'll pick that color right there. Now once again, we're going to change the line type, this time to Phantom 2. The difference between the phantom line type and the cutting plane line type is a cutting plane line type, which I forgot to do, should be set to 0.5. We set it to 0.5, it looks like that. The phantom line itself has the same line type, but the line weight is thin. That's what distinguishes the two of them. I'm going to pause again. And I'm back. I just created the visible line, the visible layer for visible lines. I wanted to point out something here as well. It indicated in the handout that the visible line should be white, and you might be looking for white here and not see it, but through this little kind of quirk in AutoCAD, black is actually identified as white. I can explain that at another time, really based on something that's a legacy. Otherwise, visible lines are going to be continuous. So we have two different line weights, 0.25, which is the default, which is half the line weight of 0.5, which is what we have for the thicker lines. Once those are all done, all you have to do is move your mouse off to one side, and the properties palette will close as long as you've gone to the properties of the palette and indicated you want it to be anchored left or anchored right, and that you want it to be allowed to dock. Docking simply means when you come off of it, you wait a few seconds, it'll go back over here, and now it'll come out, it'll go back. Now I'm going to draw some lines, and I'm going to draw those lines using the technique that we're going to cover in class. I'm simply going to use polar tracking to track a line that is exactly at 0 degrees and type in the length of the line as it's given. So it tells me that I need to start the first line at 0, 0, and that there should be 0.75 inches between each line. So I'm going to go to the line command, which I can do up here at the ribbon, or I can use it by typing the letter L. When it asks me for the start point, and if you look at my command prompt down here, that's what it's prompting me to do. I'm typing 0, 0, which is the absolute coordinate that I'm starting at. Now if I move my mouse so that it's horizontal, I get what's called a polar tracking line. That's only true if polar tracking is turned on down here in the status bar. Now I can change how many angles are usable here. Right now it's only tracking on 90, 180, 270, and 360, but that's actually all I want, so I'm just going to leave it that way. So I go to the line command, I type 0, 0, I go straight out, and since I want it to be 10 units long, I'm just going to type in a 10. Now I'm going to move my mouse by using the little wheel in the middle to zoom in, and if I push the wheel down I can pan around. Now I'm going to start my next line. In my next line I'm going to start by hovering over the endpoint of the first one. Once again I need to turn something on, and that's object snaps. So if I turn object snaps on, by default they're set to endpoint, center, intersection, and extension. I always add midpoint, always. Those are running object snaps. What that means is that now if I hover over something here, you notice it's getting the endpoint. I have to be on the endpoint. If I left click, it's still going to snap to the endpoint. But I also have what's called tracking, which means I can hover over this and acquire the endpoint. And now when I move my cursor away, if I go directly above it, I get a tracking line. The space from the first line to the next line is supposed to be 0.75. I'm typing in 0.75, and now that distance from the first point to the point I just started is 0.75. This line is supposed to be 9.313 units long, so I'm going to do that. Now you notice I'm not putting these on their layers yet. I could have set each layer as a current layer as I'm drawing, and I'll do that for the next one. But I can also modify the properties of any entity in AutoCAD very easily. So now I'm going to go to the Layer Manager, and because the next line I want to create is a cutting plane line, I'm going to make cutting plane my current layer. By making it my current layer, I can continue drawing lines. I'm going to acquire that point once again. I'm going to go up 0.75, and I'm going to go in that direction. And when I go in that direction, I'm going to go 6.875. It's a little shorter line, and you'll notice it automatically drew a different line type. Now it automatically drew a different line type, but it didn't show me the line weight, even though there was a line weight assigned. To do that, I need to go back over to the status bar, over to customization, and I need to turn on the line weight button, and then I need to come down and use that line weight button to turn on line weights. And you'll notice now that I've done that, I can see the line weight. Highly recommend you have that button showing down here. It gets a little bit confusing sometimes. At least it gets a little cluttery, so some people like to just turn it on and off. I'm going to leave it on for right now. Now you notice the cutting plane line was white, 0.5 in thickness, and phantom 2, and the first two lines look the same. Now I'm going to go back and just select that first line, which was meant to be a center line, and now I'm going to go up to the drop down where the layers are listed and say put it on the center layer. Now it's got a center line type and it's blue. This line was the chain line. I'll go up and put that on the chain layer. Now it's cyan and it's thick. Now I'm going to continue. My next line I'm going to be doing is a dimension line. This one I'm going to be doing a little bit differently. This line is going to start at 0.75 away from the end of the cutting plane line. Before I do that, I'm just going to change layers by coming up here and saying let's go to the dimension layer. Now the command for placing a dimension line is dimension linear. And all the dimension tools are also available on the ribbon. You can come up here and just pick dimension, which actually somewhat automates the process. Or you can go and pick linear, or you can type DLI for dim linear. If I pick linear dimension, I'm going to hover over the end of this and go up, and I'll still go 0.75. Now that's where my dimension starts. If I go off to the right, 6.875, you'll notice it's exactly the same length as the cutting plane line. But now I have another question. Where do I want to actually place it? The actual dimension started at the points that I picked, but it doesn't mean that the dimension line will be placed there. I have a couple possibilities. I can go back and hover over the end of this again and go up and type in 0.75. Now it places the dimension line itself exactly 0.75 inches away. I also, though, notice that the length of the cutting plane line and the length of the dimension line are the same. So I could also have gone and said, let's put a dimension from here to here. And then when it asks where I put it, I could hover on this endpoint and type 0.75. Now I'm basically dimensioning that line, and that's how it shows. But I'm placing it exactly 0.75 away. Now my next line is going to be a hidden line. So I'll go back to the line command. Now I could hover off the end of this and go up if I want to, 0.75. Or I could just stay, I'm going to start here and hover and then go up 1.5. So give me the same thing. Draw my line by polar tracking to the right, and I'm looking to see it's 7.9. Goes like that. Now again, it's on the wrong layer because I was on the dimension layer to begin with. All I have to do is pick it, put it to the hidden line layer, and now I have a hidden line that's exactly the right length. I'm going to go ahead and do the others. The next one's a phantom line. I'll do a line, starts here, goes up 0.75. I'm going to go straight over to the side. The phantom line is 8.2. Type in the 8.2, it's the right length. Again, I can select it immediately and then go up and put it on the phantom line layer, or I could have waited and done it when I was all done. One other little trick that you might want to use, I've got the next line, which is a section line. I know I've got the spacing here as 0.75, so I could use a command called offset. And the offset command asks me how far to offset something. I can type in 0.75. I can offset this line 0.75. Now the problem is it's the wrong length and it's on the wrong layer. But I can pick it. I can come up here and put it on the section layer, like so. And I have a problem with my section layer apparently, because if you take a look at it, it's thick and it should be thin. So I made a mistake when I created this. So I'm now going to go back and modify the section layer so it's no longer thick and it's thin instead. Now it's a yellow line on a white background, so it might be a little hard to see. The problem right now is it's the wrong length, but I can change the properties of anything by selecting it, right-clicking, going to properties. And one of the properties of a line is how long the line is. So I can come down here and say I want to change the length of that line. I could change the length of that line by changing it to 3.875. The problem is changing the length of a line is ambiguous because it doesn't know if I want to go from this end to that end or if I want to go from this end to that end. So that property isn't going to work for this. There is a command called lengthen that allows me to select this and say what I want to do is make the total length of that line 3.875. To use the lengthen command, however, and I just started a little bit off base. I started by selecting a line. Lengthen command, you just type lengthen, indicate the total length you want. I'm going to type 3.875, enter. Now I'm going to pick the line I want to lengthen, which in fact in this case is shortening it, but it's the same command. Now that line has been changed to 3.875. Or, of course, I could have simply gone change to the section line type. Drawn a line by going to the line command, hovering over the end, going up, getting the tracking line in place, tracking 0.75, and then typing in 3.875. Any of those would have given me exactly the same thing. Next line is a stitch line. It's going to start here, going to go up 0.75. From here it's going to go over 6.25. I'll pick it. I'll put it on the stitch line layer. Now I've got a series of those dots, and I only have one other line, which is a visible line. The visible line, I'm going to hover here and go up 0.75, and go to the right 9. And just so I don't forget, I'm going to immediately put that on the visible layer. Now that visible line should be thick, and you'll notice if I go to my line weights, the visible line at the moment is not a thick line. So we're going to go back over here, find visible, we're going to change it from 0.25 to 0.5. Now we've got what we want for this entire assignment, and that is, oh, we don't actually, we have to then go in and put in some dimensions and put in some text, so we'll cover that in just a second. Okay, the next part of this assignment is to put some text on this drawing. Before we do that, we're going to create a style of text, and that style of text will be based on a specific font. The way to create a style of text is to type the word style. ST is the alias for that. It opens a dialog box. By default, annotative has been assigned as a style name, and so has standard. You'll hear this over and over again in your career here. Never, ever, ever use the name standard or annotative as the text style that you're using in a drawing. Instead, we're going to create a new one. So I'm going to create a new style, call it Roman S. Roman S is a style name that's going to reflect when we change the font used to define that style. Roman S meets all drafting standards. So I'm going to call that Roman S, and most of the time our text is going to be annotative, so I'm going to make that annotative. I'm going to set it current, and now I'm going to come out and I'm going to place some text. Now in order to place text, you can see there's a text command right up here. There are two ways to put text in, paragraphs of text or single lines of text. We're going to do a single line of text. And what you want to do, just come over here. We'll go 1-to-1 on this. This has to do with the annotative scale. We'll talk about that later. And it asks me where my start point for my text is. Now what I'm going to do is hover over this, and I'm going to move up, and I'm going to just move up 0.1 as a start point for my text. Now it asks me what I want the height to be. The height was probably given, I guess it isn't given in the assignment, but we're going to do standard text height, and that standard text height is going to be 0.12. Now it asks for rotation angle, which is going to be 0. Now we can start putting in our text. Everything should be uppercase. So I'm going to press the caps lock, and I'm going to call this center. Now I actually want that on the text layer, so I'm going to pick it, put on a layer called text, and I'm also going to change the current layer to the layer called text. And I also note, because everything came in so thick, that when I was creating these layers, I made the text layer thick as well, probably because the last layer that I had created was a thick layer, and by going to the new layer command, it just copies the properties of the last layer you created. Now you notice the text looks a little better. Now one way to place this text a little bit quickly, so a little more quickly than I just did, is to simply copy that piece of text from one point to each point, and I'm just going and snapping to the end point of each line. Obviously these are not all center lines, but it's a nice efficient way to get a bunch of text in there. And now I can just double click on the text. It's already set where I want it to go. So then I just type in the new text, click out, click on the next new one. Next one's going to be cutting plane. Click out once again. I forgot to put one for the dimension, so we'll do that right there. So this is a dimension line, and we'll double click on here. And this is the hidden line. This is a phantom line. Now we have a section line. A stitch line, and a visible line. Now the other thing you have to do is to place the length of each of these lines, the length that you created, and do a conversion for metric. I'm going to leave that to you. You see how to put text in, so you're going to put the text in for the actual length you created. Well, we'll do one nice simple one. We'll do the center. So in order to do that, I have a couple ways I can do it. I can add another piece of text, or I could just go and edit this and then just put a few spaces in and indicate this is going to be 10.000. Now I also want in square brackets after this to have you place the metric equivalent. They're 25.4 millimeters in an inch. 10 times 25.4 is 254. So if I put 254 millimeters in here, and then I put the square bracket, I've now completed this part of the assignment, and I can save my drawing. Do this for all of the dimensions. This one, by the way, you can edit by double clicking on it, and then you can put the metric dimension right beside it by doing the conversion. You're going to multiply that number by 25.4. Okay, I'm going to stop this video. It's about 23 minutes long. I want to do a video showing you the other part of this. I'm going to do it a little differently than some of the other instructors do. Instead of having you bring it into this drawing, I am going to have you open an existing drawing and then modify the location of different objects so the line types are correct. But I'm going to do it a little differently than what some of the other videos do. So I'll just close this out by saving it. Don't forget to put it on your S drive when you save any of these drawings. The S drive is where you keep everything. Now my S drive doesn't look the same as yours. Yours is going to go directly to your name and not have to go through what I'm about to do. So I'll go to the S drive. I'm going to go down to the Daniel H. Abbott, and you should have on your S drive a folder called AEDD-105, and in that folder there should be another folder called grade, and all the assignments you turn in should be in that folder. In this particular case, I'm going to call this DA1, DWG, put it in the folder, and then I'm done with this drawing. Now I'm going to make another video to show you how to do the second half of this assignment.